My guest today is Jeff Rotmeyer, founder and CEO of Impact Hong Kong and Love 21. Jeff, welcome.
Nice being here. Good to see you again.
Wonderful to see you too. Well, I always like to start off the podcast if you could kindly tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Rotmeyer. I'm the founder and CEO of two different charities. One, ImpactHK, which work with the homeless in Hong Kong, and also Love 21 Foundation, which works with Down syndrome and autistic community in sport and nutrition.
How did you get into running two charities? I mean, most people can't run one, so...
Yeah. I wouldn't have expected this to ever happen. It was never my plan, to be honest with you. I got involved with the Down syndrome community, I guess about 14 years ago in Hong Kong. And at that time, it was my first time ever meeting anyone with Down syndrome. And I was asked to coach a football program for them, and really just kind of fell in love with the experience and the community. And really it changed my life. It gave me a better perspective on what's really important. And I just loved it. Playing football with that community every Saturday became the highlight of my life. You know, don't tell my wife that, but it was just an incredible thing to do, which led to being introduced to the homeless population, and started a bit of a movement there and inviting people to go with me to feed the homeless. And, you know, both continued. ImpactHK with the homeless, it continued to grow and it became a bit of a humanitarian movement. And then with Love 21, we continued just coaching football. That expanded in extra sports, hiking, and then it came to a point where I could really see how I really wanted to do this as a profession, and decided to start both as charities on the same day, and then was able to get them both to a certain stage. ImpactHK really kind of took off. I was able to get out of my teaching career once I could get my salary shifted out and into the charity world. And I said goodbye to my teaching career about 2 years ago today. So yeah, it's been quite a huge a huge shift in my life, and now I get to do just awesome work with awesome people every day.
Was it a very difficult transition to go from a teacher, which I don't want to say is not entrepreneurial, because I think there's definitely some entrepreneurial teachers, but it feels like a stable income and a stable environment that's structured out for you, to running two charities on your own? Was it a very painful transition? Was it a transition you enjoyed? How has it played out?
You know, it was it's hard work. You know, while I was a teacher, a full-time teacher, every break, every second, I was, working on the charity world as well. I actually rented our first homeless center not far from where I am now as a full-time teacher. So while I was a full-time teacher, we rented the space. I employed a person to work there full-time. She still works with us today. She's a rock star. But yeah, it was a huge thing. I remember being in between my classes. I'd be quickly rushing, give her a call at the center, everything all right? You still alive there? And it was real work, just really a big grind. I knew that it was going to be hard work. But I knew that if it came down to hard work, I knew I could make it happen. I knew I could do it. And it took grind, but yeah, it's been an amazing process. As far as the shift in profession, I think teachers are adaptable. They should be creative, good communicators, well-planned, well-organized in planning of events and stuff like that. So those were skills that I transferred over quite easily. And as far as, leadership and working with my staff, I think a lot of the stuff that I did as a teacher, relate to this work. So that's been good. I've always loved business. I've always been an entrepreneurial spirit. I started a shutters company when I was in high school that paid for a lot of my university life. I love business. I didn't study education. I kind of fell into it, but I've always been passionate about business, and I think it's been really exciting to watch these charities go, because both of them will have social enterprises. Both charities are looking to create businesses that help us sustain, help us better support our beneficiaries, and employing them is a great way to do so.
I think for my listeners out there wanting to make the leap from perhaps something they're doing now to this purposeful project type orientation that you have. Any tips? Is it just a question of like, just do it? I mean, you're explaining there, you did it step by step. Do you think there's any advice you can, in hindsight, give to anyone that wants to start something focused on purpose?
Sure. I mean, good things are worth fighting for. I find I've had many people come to me looking for this type of advice, and I've had many people telling me they want to do something, but they don't really understand how much hard work it's going to take. Good jobs don't just fall into your lap. You're not going to be able to shift into having a very meaningful job and working with the homeless or in another social enterprise or another charity just because you want to. I think it takes effort. And I think if you want to make that jump while having a full-time job to getting into another one, you got to put the hours in. I mean, I work very, very hard to get to this stage. And I think we can't underplay how that, you have to make the effort. I don't think I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I'd like to now just do this, and you're kind of like, well, if you want that position, you got to earn it. You got to work for it. We need that for our charity. You want to get into that role? We'll put the effort in. We're not going to just hire you right now and start giving you the cash. I worked as a volunteer with the Down syndrome community, for example. I worked for, 12 years as a volunteer. With ImpactHK, I worked full time for 4 years without making a single penny to make this position possible for myself. Right? It's hard work. It's not like I just jumped in and got a salary on day one. It's not like that. It takes effort. And I think people, if you want to get into something and you want to create something, be prepared to grind, be prepared. But the reward is that you get to live a really meaningful life. You get to do a job that you love, and it's well worth it. But the hard work is well worth it for sure.
It's a fascinating nuance you're pointing out here. I think if you're putting the work in, I mean, people hear that a lot, right? I think what isn't perhaps explained enough, I feel like, is the reward piece of doing something with purpose. Of course, the capitalistic society, everyone wants money, so that's what people see, but that's actually not what brings you satisfaction, right? I mean, this actually impacting communities that needed help and helping those communities have a better life. That is so purposeful. I wish you could explain that feeling to people, because when people hear hard work, I think it puts them off. And I guess, that the banks do this quite well. They're like, well, work hard, but look, you'll own a big house in Manhattan and you'll be able to drive a Ferrari. So that entices brilliant people into banking. How can we entice brilliant people into purpose-driven charities like yours?
Well, there's a couple aspects to it. I mean, number one, people doing meaningful work shouldn't be paid less. People doing meaningful work should be paid on the product, and they should be paid on what they deliver, right? For example, if you have a charity working with cancer patients and trying to solve and cure cancer, that charity should be judged on, can they cure cancer, not on their admin percentage of what people are paid. It's funny sometimes when people look at charities and they look at, oh, you shouldn't earn that much because you work for a charity. And yet you have somebody who's just good at, some type of banking or whatever, and they make $1 gazillion. I mean, sorry, that's not a society I want to live in. I don't think people should be judged on, just because you do something meaningful doesn't mean you shouldn't be paid for it, number one. But no, I think the hard work aspect to it, I mean, the job that I do now is hard. I mean, I work extremely long hours. It's stressful. I work about 14 hours on average a day, so I really do push the hours, but the work that I do is amazing. The people I work with are amazing. I have a lot of one-on-one conversations with individuals. You put a lot of, when you work with the homeless, you have to put, your heart into it, and it's a lot of heart-to-heart talks. It's a lot of real investment in individuals, and because you don't empower a person in pain by giving them a job, you empower them through their heart, through love, through kindness, through friendship, through opportunities for fun. We want to treat people how we'd like to be treated, and we want to really invest that time in humans. So I wake up every day and I absolutely love going to work. I absolutely love it. and I've gotten myself to that position through hard work. But at the same time, I would never do anything else now. I am absolutely in love with this type of work.
You've given me like shivers, like with inspiration. I kind of I really want people, listeners, to pick up on this kind of vibe, the purposeful energy that you get from doing something so meaningful. And I couldn't agree more with, people doing good things should be paid well. I think it's ridiculous that there's this mindset that, oh, well, you're a charity, so you shouldn't earn anything. How can people exist if that's the case? And no wonder there's not enough, frankly, talented people putting their energies into big problems like you are. It kind of makes you feel guilty for earning a living. It's just not right. We need to flip that.
Yeah.
That absolutely needs to be flipped. I would love to be helping making that happen. I think that absolutely needs to change, and people deserve to be paid better than those setting up mortgages that create bankruptcy and devastation, get paid gazillions of pounds and dollars or whatever, and those doing meaningful work almost get frowned upon if they're trying to earn a living from it. So anyway, I absolutely think that's something really important to address, and thank you for bringing it up.
I'll jump in on that for a sec, Sam. You look at like a guy like John Wood, right? John Wood, who was I guess CEO of Room to Read. Yep. Right, that charity, Room to Read. And you look at what happened there. You look at what he did with that charity, and you look at the results that he got. I mean, this is a guy who came from the corporate world, left to an incredible position, I think, as a very talented leader. I don't really know his resume, to be honest, but I know it's impressive.
He stepped in. Mind-blowing. I know him well. Yeah.
And unbelievable. Look at the results. They speak for themselves. We need incredible talent and leadership in this profession, just like in teaching, right? I mean, teachers in Hong Kong make a great salary comparatively internationally, right? As they should. I mean, you get more talented teachers in there. You're working with the youth. The whole society is going to flip. That's a bit of a depressing talk, but you're right. It's got to change.
I'm hopeful. Actually, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful with stories like yours getting out there. If someone today is listening and they've got a well-paying job, maybe they can go out and create a well-paying job with a purpose. It's not that hard. Actually, John Wood has written a whole book about a purpose within a corporate world, and I think what it does, it's not just sustaining income. What I think is the nuance of this that you've mentioned there that I want people to get is that the jumping out of bed, never would want to do anything else feeling, which I think most people in high paid jobs that I've met don't have that same feeling unless purpose is in the business. So you're describing something that money can't buy, a bit like love, right? It's that total satisfaction of having an impact. How do you measure success today for yourself personally and for your charities?
It's a tough question. I mean, I see success every single day with ImpactHK. I see individuals who, I've seen personally in the park, on the ground, using heroin every day, dying. And I see them now today working in our center, joining fitness classes and planning a camping trip. We're going to a movie tomorrow with these individuals. They're completely off heroin. And their job now is in helping other people who are facing similar predicaments that they were in. It's unbelievable. When I see that, that's what I want to see. That's I get to see that every day. So I see that success every day. And you also see, but you also see how we need to get a lot stronger very, very quickly. I know what we need to do for the next 5 years, and I've got that very clear, and we need to just attack it. And we have to do so with a complete urgency because we have individuals right now who are suffering that we can't help right now. And we have to get stronger to adapt, to strengthen our programs to help that individual. And I think we'll get there. I know we'll get there. But success is not really something I think about. I don't really have that in my vocab. My only thought is on just attacking solutions. And as long as there are problems, then that's what needs to be focused on.
I think the homeless issue is I've been looking into it myself lately. I've been looking at investing in a business. The primary concept is there's estate agents. You have them in Hong Kong. We have them here in England that sell property. They just sell property. That's all they do. And then the commission goes in the pockets, often of shareholders or the people that have sold the property. I want property to be sold, and the profits from that transaction, which can be huge money, by the way, should go into solving the homelessness crisis. And so then that brings purpose, I think, to an industry that has quite a lack of it other than a transactional thing. But it's been interesting going through the process of trying to get something like that off the ground, and how people's perceptions of homelessness are set in as if, so for example, I was saying to someone this idea, and they were like, well, at the end of the day, a lot of homeless people want to be homeless. There's a lot of these belief systems. Can we smash them? Any thoughts on this?
Oh, completely. Yeah, that's what we do every day. As a charity, we're very good at getting individuals off the streets. We've helped over 200 individuals into shelter in the last 2 years. So we're helping individuals off the streets every day, and we keep them off the streets not because we provide them with shelter. We keep them off the streets because we provide them with community and friendship and laughter and a sense of purpose, and that's how money can't solve homelessness. So if you did have an idea like that, which is a good one, it's a caring one, we just need to think holistically in terms of how we support individuals off the streets. Shelter is one aspect, right? A job is one aspect, but really the glue that will keep them off is the friendship and giving people an opportunity to connect with other individuals and have a laugh, have a community, have connection, right?
Well, my idea would be the profit from this would go to people like you, by the way. I think it is a very nuanced thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, when you can find a charity that does good work, and I'm proud of ImpactHK and the work we do, I think it's a huge amount of support. You put it towards a very specific thing, your dollar is going to the right program and the right charity. I think that's amazing. But as far as, working with the homeless, people are always going to fall down. You're never going to be able to stop homelessness from happening. People have problems. That's reality. The secret is in educating society as much as possible on the importance of caring for people once they have fallen down. And that's why we invest as a charity a lot of time. Just before speaking with you now, I just spoke to a school in Hong Kong. And, that's what we have to do. We have to open up people's eyes. So when they see a person on the streets, their very first thought is care. It should suck. When you see an individual outside, that should hurt you. You should feel care, because nobody wants to live in a society where people are in pain around you, and it's unacceptable. And it makes absolutely zero sense to judge an individual or criticize someone's choices when you've never met them and you don't know who they are. And I could give you an example of so many people who are judged. Like an individual I just spoke about, it was about 200 meters from me now, a 72-year-old man who's sitting on a bench right now in a park. And that is an individual who is judged. People look at him, they blame him for his situation. They criticize his choices. They try to give him advice as to what he should do, right? And they even try to think about what he's thinking about, right? And I know him. He's a friend of mine now, and I know he's thinking about how his 8-year-old son died in an accident. He blames himself for that. He positions himself in the children's playground to torture himself. And he doesn't want to live anymore. He wants to die. He's in that much pain every day. And, when you point out a story like that, I'm sure nobody who would understand that guy's situation would say, lazy, or you would never say, this guy, just get him in an apartment and everything's going to be fine. Yeah. Right. And when you think of choices, you have to think, okay, what is the choice? Is the choice my reality? I've got a home. I've got a family that love me and care for me. We go to dinners together. We laugh together. We go to hiking and swim at the beach. We have a great family environment. Or would you rather live in a park with rats and bugs and people stealing from you and you're being told to go somewhere else? You have incredible pain from your past. You have no hope for your future. And you're like, well, that's reality. You think someone's going to leave this beautiful life of a family on the beach where you feel loved, and you're going to choose to be alone in a park in that much pain? It makes zero sense at all. In Hong Kong, you do have one choice often that the homeless do have between living inside and living outside. And that's living in a park in that level of pain I just described, or living in a coffin home or a caged home with the same lack of hope, lack of care, lack of connection. But one is paying 2,000 Hong Kong dollars a month, roughly 300 US a month, to live in a tiny box with no breathability, or living in the park. And that is sometimes the choice. But I have to say that living in that box, which thousands of people do in Hong Kong, is not a home, and technically is homeless. It's an illegal space. So sometimes people do bounce in between these spaces and not. But it's a tough decision. But either way, it's a horrible decision. And the last thing we need is people in privileged positions judging these people and pushing a narrative that is so cruel, really. You know,
I couldn't agree more. And what I talk within my own family that when I've talked about the homelessness issue in particular, there really is an inbuilt, almost like it's their own fault. They drink too much, and why do they drink too much? You know, like you just described. Frankly, it's got me quite emotional. I have a 3-year-old, and I just couldn't imagine anything happening to him. And I think I could end up in exactly the same situation. I can't imagine having to deal with that sort of pain. And so, I think if people had a bit more empathy, they'd stop giving advice and do more to help.
Oh,
and so,
totally. It's impossible. It's impossible to sleep outside sober. I've slept next to the gentleman I spoke of. I slept next to him in that playground one evening, and I have to say, I had to drink a lot of beer. I couldn't sleep. Even when I drank, quite a few beer just to try and relax myself enough to get some sleep. And to be honest, I only slept about an hour and a half. It was a horrible night. It's not like you're outside in the streets and you're like going to tuck yourself in and go, "Good night, everybody. I'm going to sleep now." It's not like that. You're in pain, right? It's normal when you're in pain to want to escape that pain. And I mean, I do it. Everybody does it in some way, whether you meditate or you stare at your phone, play games to not think about your stress or your pressure. And these individuals that are outside are in immense pain. So with drug addiction stuff, it's a regular thing. We employ drug users. That's what we do. When somebody who's high or drunk or whatever comes into our center, that to me is an amazing opportunity. That is somebody I want to talk to. And I want to make sure that they know that they're cared for. And I want to make sure that they know that there is an opportunity with us and that they're welcome here. And we cherish a moment when somebody asks you for help, because it's a privilege to help someone. And the last thing that somebody who's using drugs or alcohol or whatever needs is a complete unfair judgment and being told just to go away and come back when you're clean. It's ridiculous.
There's two things I want to ask. Again, I'm always thinking about how the audience, if the audience wanted to help a homeless person, is there a process? I mean, in England, there are lots of good charities like yours too, but I feel like, is there a good way to start a relationship with someone on the street that you want to help? Also, at the same time, is there an insight into how did you end up this way, Jeff? I've interviewed thousands of people in my time. There's not enough people like you. How did you get this way? What changed? What triggered it? What was it? Was it your parents? Was it your upbringing? Was it your own education? Was it just naturally there? How did you have this empathy that you have?
I don't know. I think my parents are pretty amazing. To be honest with you, I've had a pretty privileged life. I've had very loving parents, and they're very sacrificial. I do know that, and I definitely think I learned a lot of their sacrificial side of always putting other people first. And I think I've got that from them. And I think over time, I just saw through teaching and leadership, learning to be a leader through teaching. I think I just something I just kind of fell into. And I don't think I'm like superhuman. I think lots of people, when given an opportunity to do this type of work, would just do the same thing as me. I think that the key is in providing more opportunities for employment in helping people. I think that is the thing that we've tapped into. The individuals that we help off the streets, man, they are awesome. I mean, they love helping people. The funny thing is that the homeless are characterized as lazy, which is hilarious to me, because one of the greatest challenges we have with the staff that we employ off the streets is that we can't stop them from working. It's very difficult to get them to take a holiday. We're really struggling with that. We've actually had to have meetings and trying to trick them into taking days off. It's hilarious. And then you have people in society, saying that they're lazy. It's just funny. And it's the fact of them finally having an opportunity. We don't talk about rehabilitation with the individuals we're supporting. We're talking about habilitation. This is the first time they've ever been supported. It's the first time they've ever been encouraged and motivated to do meaningful work. And it brings the best out of people. So it's just exciting to be able to give these friends an opportunity to do meaningful work. And it just brings out the best in them and the people that they support.
I think it's amazing, and I wish all companies did this. If someone walks in drunk, and I've seen this here, someone walked recently into a supermarket and they were quite drunk. Of course, the first thing the security people try to do is get you out of that environment and get rid of you. And I love the idea that if someone walks in, the first thing your instinct is as a human being is, wow, there's someone here I can help. How can I help you? What do you need? I think if we could lead with that in life, what a different planet we'd be living in right now.
I'll tell you, I'll give you an example I think about often is, I can think of an example in like a supermarket. And if I was in a supermarket and I was checking out and I was putting my food on the till, it was my turn next. And somebody behind me just steps up and just really rudely butts in and says, hey, can I go ahead of you? Or I don't know, some ridiculous example, which happens from time to time, right? If your very first thought when you have someone do something extreme to you is of judgment, like, oh, what a dickhead, or whatever, if you can get on a level where your very first thought when somebody acts in a way that you deem is unacceptable, your very first thought is not of judgments, is actually of, whoa, this person might be going through a really tough time. You can get on that level, and I'm not there yet. I still think a lot of people are dickheads, and I try to get on, you try to get on that level where you can first, this is coming from somewhere, right? Bad acts do not define these individuals as human beings. People, like, for example, it makes zero sense for a homeless individual to come into our center skipping and whistling and saying good morning to everybody. It makes perfect sense for somebody to come into our center being a complete asshole. This is an individual who slept outside last night, who probably had one of the worst nights, a worse night than I've ever had in my entire life. Who am I to judge that individual? Who am I to place my opinion on how they should behave? I don't have any idea what they're going through. And I like it when people come in and are a bit of a dickhead or an asshole. I kind of appreciate that in a way. It gives me a chance to show them that this is a safe place. This is a place you can come in. And yes, I can tell you that from now going forward, that's going to be unacceptable. And that there are other people here also in pain and also need care and kindness. And it gives you a moment to be able to kind of get on more of a human level and I think further have a conversation with someone. But you do have people like that who are on guard, right? Because the homeless, they have to be so strong. They have to put this defense quality out, and they have to kind of defend themselves. So if you went up to a homeless person and say, hey, you need anything? You'd be like, no, I'm fine. Well, maybe he's not, but I don't blame him for saying that. He has to tell, am I going to tell a perfect stranger my whole life story? It makes no sense. So your earlier question on, how can we help the homeless? Well, we have to understand we're not going to be able to rock up to some stranger with a banana and just strike this amazing friendship. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes care, and you have to put the effort in. You want to earn someone's trust on the streets, that takes effort. And if you can get on a one-on-one level and a friendship level with somebody, that's easily the best way to empower them off the streets, whether it be in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from, or Hong Kong, or wherever.
Totally. I think it's interesting as well, us as evolving as people. I mean, I consider myself quite quite an empathetic person, but I when I first moved to England, after living in Hong Kong for 20 years, I was actually shocked how many homeless people there were on the streets here. It is also crazy. I mean, Hong Kong has some serious problems, of course, as well. But I feel like you just described Hong Kong, and it's kind of hidden a bit more in, like you're talking about, those cage environments. In England, they're literally, there's just at the end of my street, and I live in a pretty wealthy area. There's 5 people that live on the street down there. And it's just shocking. And I remember at first trying to connect, because they're part of my community. I moved to this area, trying to connect and being scared. And being worried that they might, break into my home if they know where I live, or these weird. And as I got to know a few of the homeless people here, like you said, actually, at first they're quite rude. And like you say, I'm rude if I don't have a cup of coffee in the morning. So, that's just natural, isn't it? Like you say, with the process. But it's been interesting watching. I've learnt myself to be more empathetic and listen more and try to understand what that person's going through. And I recently, for example, I gave a bag of crisps to one of the homeless people and just kind of walked away. And then someone said to me, "You shouldn't give him anything. He's fine. It's just, And I'm like, yeah. But all I did was give him a bag of crisps. He might be fine. He, in your opinion, he's sitting in the street just trying to get money because he's lazy. That's your opinion. That's fine. And maybe that's true. But all I did was give him a bag of crisps, no big deal, is it? So he conned me out of a bag of crisps, did he? But it's funny how people's judgment on you doing something for someone else then also comes into play.
Those are the worst people.
And I actually got another case where it's like you're encouraging him to be at the end of the street because you're giving him stuff. I'm like, it's just bizarre. But I love talking about it, and I love the fact that your philosophy of improving yourself. And I've had that exact example where someone pushes in front of me, and I think I've had exactly the same initial reaction, which is like, "Hey man, what's wrong with you? Don't be so rude." And I have a lot of trolls on some of my social media channels, and actually I've learned it's more interesting to be nice to trolls than it is to fight them. And some of those trolls have ended up becoming people I've got to know, and actually they're pretty interesting people. They've got their pain. It's often not about you. So I think it's a great philosophy, Jeff. So thanks for sharing it. I think the homeless.
Well, just 2 seconds on that. What I have
Go
to
ahead,
say.
yeah, please.
Because there's people that discourage kindness. Right. That's kind of the worst. That's the low of the low. You try to help someone and they start telling you this false narrative of how you should not be kind to people, as if your kindness is going to result in, as if they know everything about what your kindness is going to be. It's kind of, I'm okay if people don't care about the homeless, but I do take offense to people going and not just not caring, but also spreading these false narratives of judgment of people they don't know about. That to me needs to be squashed. I love squashing people like that because I don't think that they're bad people. Judgment goes both ways. I don't think they're bad people. I just think they just haven't learned. They just haven't had the education and they can't understand the problem. So,
I could agree. I mean, the worst for me is, and I don't want to insult my own family, but my brother's children, and I won't name which one it is, but one of my brother's children, he actually tells them these things, and then they say, "Well, homeless, it's their fault." I'm like, no, that's what your father's told you, but that's not true. Have you actually spoken to a homeless person to understand what they're going through? No, I don't need to. It's their own fault. And, if they didn't drink, they'd be fine, but why do they drink? It can happen to you. Something can happen to you to make you go that way, And so anyway, I think one of the things, I feel like homelessness itself is pretty recognized. Let's call it as an area that society needs to improve itself on and be kinder to people. Down syndrome, however, and I can talk for myself, I feel like I don't know a lot about what problems are there that you're solving. Tell us a little bit about the Down syndrome charity.
It's, the reason I started as a charity is basically to increase the life expectancy. In Hong Kong, you have one of the highest life expectancies in the world, and with the Down syndrome community, it's the opposite, right? And you kind of have to wonder, well, why is that? And I guess it's partially the fact that I walked around this entire week throughout Hong Kong and I haven't seen a single individual with Down syndrome, right? And what a shame that is, because this is such a beautiful community that have so much to offer our society. And And why would we want to live in a society where everybody's the same? That makes no sense at all, right? We have to, when we look at individuals, we should be absolutely looking at what they offer. What are their abilities? What are their talents? Not on what they cannot do. So if you look at that and, and trying to think, how can we help extend the life of these individuals in Hong Kong? How can we get them more involved in our society? Sport alone is not enough. I don't believe in starting charities, and I wouldn't have started either charity if it was just in feeding people or just in providing sport. Sport alone is not enough. So what we've got is a real holistic program with diet, nutrition, even classes that are 100% for the parents. At the end of the day, the child's going to spend the most time with that parent. And if that parent's empowered and supported, then that's going to benefit the kid. We're really thinking outside the box, I think, in terms of how to start a charity and how to really make the biggest impact with the people we support.
And so I think let's talk quickly about the business model of a charity. Again, I think this is another, I don't want to say misconception, but a lot of people see charities, okay, you need more money. Okay, you need more money. But how do you sustain your charity? How do you make it work?
It's been interesting. Yeah. ImpactHK has been a movement of thousands of people. And with that base, that amount of people, it comes with a lot of support financially as well. These individuals work with corporations, which results in more money coming in. But I guess the funding model with ImpactHK has been the movement of the people, and that's powered us forward. And then once we got to be a charity, now we get very good corporate support. We have a very strong CSR program, which is called Corporate Social Responsibility, and taking employees out, showing them what we do, how we do it, why we do it. That pays a lot of bills as well. Further partnerships with corporations. We also now get foundation support. And I think as a charity now, we're also opening up businesses. We have our retail shop, clothing, coffee brand. We're opening up a painting company, and also going to open up restaurants. Love 21, on the other hand, has had a totally different model in terms of, we aren't a volunteer-driven organization. We have some coaches. We have some volunteers who are more dedicated and just consistent. No, we don't have much of a rotation. ImpactHK, 5,000 volunteers roughly in 2 years. Love 21, more like 25. So you don't have the same model. But we have received good support from Siganti Capital Management. We just got also some big funding from the Jockey Club and HSBC, DH Chen Foundation. So we've got some good support with Love 21. But again, with Love 21, we also want to go into social enterprise. We want to get, our community out there, and we want to create some cafes. We're going to open up some. The plan is to open up some Jamaican food, Caribbean food cafes. Call them One Love, Love 21, One Love. Little Bob Marley tribute there, but I think it's going to be really unique, and I think it'll be a fun, really cool cafe, good music, incredible service. And I think it's going to be just fun to just get this community more involved and show Hong Kong how amazing they are.
One of my favorite restaurants in London, it's called 15. Have you heard of it?
No.
It was a Jamie Oliver initiative. Unfortunately, he got caught in his financial problems in the restaurant industry, but it was a great model. He would take people from troubled backgrounds into the restaurant and train them how to cook and train them how to be, good at service and give them a job when no one else would. And it's tremendous idea. I loved it. I used to go there, I would say once a week, and just be inspired by the people that came in there. To your point about people's perception of someone like who's homeless being lazy, the perception of certain individuals coming from certain sectors of society also being lazy is completely not true. And so I like the model. I like the model moving towards as well having your own products and your own businesses that hopefully generate profit. And I'm also interested in just quickly, because I'm thinking about people who might want to set up something for themselves and learning from you. This is B corporation model versus a charity model. Do you have any views on those?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to get. I personally don't like asking for handouts. I don't like the idea of, as a charity, begging and jumping through massive hoops of like applications and all that. It's not my thing. It's not my dream job is not in writing applications. And often charities kind of fall into that because they don't think innovatively, and they have their product of what they do, and they spend the majority of their time maintaining that product and maintaining that service and just getting funding to survive. And sometimes charities, what they do in Hong Kong, they typically will, the only way they can get new funding is by starting a new program, right? And what they do is they continue to expand, new program, new funding, new program, new funding, new program. And then they basically have a shitload of programs that they do very, very mediocrely, right? They don't do anything exceptionally. And I think it's a much better model as a charity to develop a program that is awesome. It dominates, like just a kick-ass charity program where the result is so amazing that people will donate to it, right? It's like, at the end of the day, it's the product, like we touched on earlier. Does this cancer, do they cure cancer, right? I want to support a charity that cures cancer, not a charity that does mediocre programs that support cancer research, right? I want to support a charity that has an amazing product. And I think that's what you do as a charity. Instead of you going out and, constantly on the search for the funding, instead focus on just really create a charity that's kick-ass.
I love it. I think you're talking about...
The money will come.
Because in business models are always getting evolved. You could argue the high street is being replaced by Amazon, good or bad. I mean, that's what's happening. I feel like charities isn't having the same evolution. I do feel like you're trying to do that. I mean, what you're talking about there, to me, charities need, just because you are a charity doesn't mean necessarily you're having an impact, right? And so it's interesting. I think you're talking about an evolution of the charity model, which is fascinating. And I like the ideas, the principles of the people in that charity getting paid properly and not being ashamed of it. Why shouldn't they? And I like the idea of having your own products and your own outreach and your own ways of generating income. And I love the concept of community too. I think that's incredibly powerful. And so it's fascinating. When you set out to do these two charities, one, would you recommend people do 2 charities or 1, or should they just go for it and do 3 when they start out?
Just do one.
Just do one.
Just do one. Trust me on this one. But no, I mean, for me, it worked out amazingly. I wouldn't change it for the world. I look at this as a great challenge, and I'm super, super pumped up and excited about both. Long-term wise, we'll see how it goes, right?
Is there synergy? Is there a synergy? I mean, back office structure, for example, is there a way of making make it easier to do 2? Hong Kong's just a networking city. I mean, it's incredible how, both charities benefit from me being CEO of both. The connection wise, it works. The publicity works. There's so many aspects that bring so many positives to it. And I can get shit done really, really quickly. So like in Hong Kong, you've just got a lot of reach, a lot of connections. If I need something here, I can, I've got this person here, right? You do have to constantly be really on guard of any potential conflict of interest. You cannot take any chances in that, and I don't. There's no point in me doing it in any way. And if it ever gets to a point where a different leader could come in and do a better job for either of those charities, then it's my time to step out. And that's going to come at some stage, and not sure when that'll be. But the goal of... Yeah. Sorry, Jeff. Sorry, I want to make sure people pick up on that, because there's a lot of my listeners as well that are running businesses, and they get stuck in those businesses. And one of the things I have also learned in my last company, I let someone else run it because it was the right time to let someone else run it. That is incredible leadership. Sometimes just holding on to it for the sake of it. Whatever's best for the business, especially when it's a purposeful business, is the best thing for the business, right? So that's real leadership. You just highlighted there, Jeff, the point you just made there. I think, giving up the power and let's call it the kudos and the fame, that you're only doing all of that to make the charity work, right? And I think that's sometimes what also people miss when they see people doing charitable work, they think they're just promoting themselves by doing this good thing. But the best charities are doing what you just described there, which is, I just want to make the charity work. And at some point, I might no longer be the best person to run both these charities, and I will let the best person run it. That's I want people to pick up on that. So sorry, I just want to highlight it. I interrupt you a bit too much.
I want this charity to be a charity that is here hundreds and hundreds of years from now, both of them, right? So I'm not going to be around. I want this charity to be one that completely is ingrained in the fabric of Hong Kong, and hundreds and hundreds of years. I think that's the goal.
I always think shouldn't governments be doing this? Isn't this the role of I always think a society is judged by how it treats its poorest, and I always think, isn't this something government should be doing?
Yeah, I think if you had an amazing government, I would say, yeah, that would be nice. But realistically, I don't see that being possible.
Is it just for the sake of brainstorming it? I always think about, I started an agency called Fluid, and I sold it to PwC. PwC could have never have started that business. With all due respect to the brilliant people there, they wouldn't have wanted to do the work. But once it was working and built up, then they buy it and they can scale it much better than I ever did. But, is it not true for charities? A similar model. Once you've got it working, you then go to the government and you say, look, this is how you do it. This is how you even get it funded. Now just do it.
Well, if you spoke about the Hong Kong government and ImpactHK, it's very, very difficult to ever imagine them being able to do it because it's so heart-led on what we do. And our rigidity of rules, if you look at the rules and regulations and how bureaucratic the Hong Kong government is, it would never be able to do what we do. It just wouldn't be able to do. You'd be too bottled down in rules. So, for example, you have 3 major charities in Hong Kong that help the homeless, which are government funded. And all of those charities, I've met with them recently, none of them can support individuals with drug addiction for shelter. So they do not support the homeless who have drug addiction. They just refer them to other agencies and push them away to other groups. That's
crazy.
We're talking about 95% of the homeless in Hong Kong. So,
and why do they put that rule in place? Is this one of these misunderstandings again? Why is that rule there?
Well, it's a lot of things, and I'm definitely not an expert in understanding it, but I do know that as far as risk taking, putting your neck out with the government, it's just not going to happen, because the government's top job, and when I say that, I mean their most important priority is keeping their job. That's their top job. That's their number one focus, is how can I maintain my job and keep my job. Putting yourself out there and taking a bold risk in working with the homeless is putting your job at risk. I'll give you an example. We had an individual I helped recently. He's on his last legs of methadone. In time working with us, he got off heroin, and then he was on his last 15 milligrams of methadone. And I took him out to where I live, South Lantau, and I put him in a small hotel near my home. And we put him in there for 3.5 weeks. And every morning I would get up, go there at 8 a.m. or 7:30, and we go hiking, and had his counseling out there, and kicked his last legs in methadone. And now he works full time for us, and he's doing amazing. Just saw him today as well. He's killing it. Just killing it. It's a very bold move. We rented a hotel. The budget we spent on him wasn't the same budget that we spend on other people we're helping. The risks of what could have happened, there's just so much, right? That type of, I guess, agility and, solution focused, bold solution focused work. I think it's very difficult to ever imagine the government of Hong Kong coming up with a plan like that. But you do have to think like that, because we treat each beneficiary as a friend. Each person that we work with, we look at on a one-on-one level of that specific person. We don't take hundreds of individuals and make them conform into one single program. Now, could the government do that?
That's very unique.
Potentially.
To your point, that's very hard for anyone to think that way because, as you say, with other existing charity structures, quite often they have a fixed program. I mean, I see it a lot with the unemployed right now. There's a lot of people unemployed that, frankly, could end up homeless. And a lot of the systems are like, okay, you are not going to get any money because you have a little bit of savings, for example, or you're not going to get any money because you could get a job, but you just haven't got one yet. Like there's all these rules in place that allow people, frankly, to go over the cliff and get into trouble that don't make any sense in especially in the COVID world. But you're not listening to people's particular needs, and I think that I'm hoping that's going to change because I think technology is allowing us to understand people better. I mean, of course, technology has a lot of bad to it too, but there's technology, I think, does also allow us to tailor-make things at scale. And I think that's what you're talking about there. You're talking about tailoring your service to people's needs, but trying to still do it at scale. That's the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you look at look at dog charities, right? Dog rescue charities. If the government that might be something that the government could do. Just for example, because it could become a program that is quite, you have the dogs, they're taken in, they're saved. Then you have some of the dogs which are calm. They could be used in rehabilitation purposes throughout the day. Homeless charities that dogs could be partnered with. That could all be set up and run in a pretty straightforward way. And if the government was doing that, then maybe they would understand a little bit more about how they also have to change policy in terms of dog shops and puppy mills or whatever they're called, and maybe they would get a little bit more of a wake-up call, and then maybe they would start changing policy if they were involved more on the ground. But at the end of the day, I still think there's something to be said about NGO leadership and small NGOs and collaborations amongst NGOs that I think is very difficult to replicate and very difficult to have a government run.
Doesn't the government?
Some of our, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jeff. You go ahead.
No.
Go ahead. No, I mean you mentioned an interesting. I mean, I know a lot about the dog rescue space. I actually have two dogs from dog rescue. Actually, it's very interesting. Probably parallel to, in some respects, to what you're talking about, because in Hong Kong anyway, you've got the Hong Kong Dog Rescue, which actually kind of, in some respects, compete with the SPCA because the SPCA is government funded. They kill the dogs. Within, if you're not adopted within a week, they put the dogs down. Healthy, normal, happy dogs. If they haven't got a home within a week, they put them down. So the Hong Kong Dog Rescue Charity started, which is where I got my dogs from. They said, why are we putting these healthy, normal dogs down? It doesn't make any sense. But the government won't continue to fund unless they've got homed quickly. So, I mean, but I wonder, it's... I guess with animals, somehow it's easier to be, somehow clinical about it. I mean, of course, they're not going to say put humans down, but conceptually, I'm kind of shocked. A government must come and look at what you're doing and saying, what can we learn from this charity and do better? I know the Hong Kong government has its failings, but in the end, they are there to serve the people. Do they not even come and look?
Yeah, we have not had any contact from the government in any way. I've spoken with other charities who are government subvented, and the government does reach out to them. And I recently was told by one of the big ones here that the government official told them about the work we're doing, and asked if they could do something similar in terms of our housing first policy. So in terms of we automatically get people into shelter. But that conversation with them didn't go very far because of, multiple rules and regulations that they have.
It's total common sense, isn't it? Like back to your point earlier about as soon as they have at home, they have community, hopefully have some laughter, they have, and those things all bond. And then, it just makes total sense. I can't believe they don't already have this policy. I mean, there must be, is there a country doing it right? Do when you look at the map at the moment, is there some, I always think like education is always, Sweden always comes up and, is doing it well. Is there anybody?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I did see a Facebook post on one country, maybe it was Iceland or something, that completely eliminated homelessness right away, like within a year. And they just shot everybody into homes and it was done. Right. 100%.
It's worth
right. And I don't know what's happened with that since, but that wouldn't work in Hong Kong. the level of mental illness we see on the streets is really worrying. And, we have individuals outside that are in really bad shape, who really are severely mentally ill. And you have, schizophrenia on the streets and like really, really serious issues. And housing wouldn't solve that problem. There's a lack of mental health support in Hong Kong. There's a lot of problems, and you couldn't just sweep everybody up into shelter and then let it go. So I'm not sure what happened there. Every country is different, but I do think every human definitely needs a friend, and we all need a community. We all need connection. And if you have a homeless charity that doesn't think about that, then honestly, I don't think they're going to be getting good results no matter where they are.
Couldn't agree more. So I could talk to you forever. I'm so grateful you take the time out from, frankly, I know a very busy life running two very important charities. So I want to thank you for taking time out. I wanted to end, I guess, with a light question. And some people don't call this light, but if you went back to your younger self and gave some advice, Jeff, what would it be?
I would say, think about something that you deeply care about. Think about a cause, whether it be working with, animals or seniors or the intellectually disabled or the homeless or anything. Think about something that you care about, and, just take a step towards it, right? Oftentimes people, they don't think about trying because they feel like they have to hit a home run in their first bat. And, if you think back to 6 years ago when I was introduced to the homeless population, I didn't solve homelessness on that day. But by just taking that first step, it led to many more in an education on how I can make a greater impact. So I really, when I think about the youth and when I speak with them regularly, I encourage them. I say, just take a step. Just think about something and just try it and see what happens. And, when you lead with your heart, I think great things happen, and nothing bad's going to happen, but, it'll be a good experience.
I think great advice. And it sounds like your younger self listened. You seem to be doing just that. I think my translation of what you say is find your purpose, and it can take time sometimes. I think it doesn't happen overnight. Like you say, get involved in things that matter to you. I always tell people to look at what's happened to them. Like my father, for example, had heart disease. So I like to help charities that are trying to help families that have been affected by that. So I think digging into your own family history can also bring out what your purpose is, but you need to look, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to sum up a few things that I've taken away from the chat with you today. I think good things are always worth fighting for, but you're going to have to fight. So be prepared and expect that. Nothing, no meaningful work should be paid less. I couldn't agree with that more. I feel like making that into a T-shirt and selling it everywhere and the money coming back to your charity. I couldn't agree with that more. I'd love to change that paradigm. I'm going to put the Room to Read and John Wood stuff in this podcast link too, because you brought up another great charity there that's doing purposeful work. And so, thanks for mentioning him. I want to get this pronunciation right, but I'm slightly dyslexic, but I like the word a lot when you said habilitation. Habilitation, kind of that's a really interesting word. And I think a lot of the time people see rehabilitation, right? Habilitation. And so I really love that context of that word. It's this reframing how people see the problem, right? So it's really good. I love the point you made as well about we're all different, and that's a good thing. I think somehow there is this kind of like conformed society expectation, and I just couldn't agree more. I have to say, one of the things I do love about London is the diversity of the people that are walking around, and there's quite a few Down syndrome kids living in my neighbourhood, and I've become friends with them. You have that interaction, and you learn and you grow by having different people around you, and so I just couldn't agree with it more. I want to shout, governments, wake up, because I think what you are doing should be the role of a good government. So I thank you for filling the gap that is clearly in Hong Kong. Don't want to get you into any trouble because the Hong Kong laws changed recently. So we love Hong Kong, but wake up, government, wake up, because I think there's some big problems that need solving, and it shouldn't be on the shoulders of just people like Jeff. And take a step forward towards it. I like that kind of general gist. Lean in, find your purpose. And Jeff, thank you for sharing all of these insights with us today. And thank you for doing the great work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate the chat. Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. I hope you found Jeff's insights useful. And if you want to know more about the charitable work that he's doing, please click the links in the broadcast below. In addition, you could support him by doing as little as just going on his social media, giving him a like, giving a comment on one of his channels, and just sharing what he's trying to achieve. Of course, you could go a step further and offer to support, sponsor, or just perhaps go to one of his coffee shops in Hong Kong and buy a drink. I want to thank you again for listening, and know you have thousands of podcasts that you could be listening to, and you choose to listen to us. We feel exceedingly lucky.